All right, so this is our second in our career fair preparation series for the spring, interviewing 101. So I do want to quickly recap a few upcoming events before handing it over to BMES so they can take over on this one. This Monday, would be 3 days from now, Intertech is coming to do an industry hour with us. And this will be online. It's from 4 to 5 p.m. I'll send out another reminder later today with the link to it, but be sure to check that out. So it's 4 to 5 p.m. on Monday. It'll be virtual. We will be recording that. We do have another career fair prep event next Friday from 11 to noon. That's going to be in SLC 2.304. That'll be over even better interviewing. So we're covering the basics today. Next week will be more of a workshop where we can actually practice some of those skills, answering some of these behavioral questions that we'll be talking about, and a few more other things. The following Friday, which is February 17th, we'll have some mock interviews that you can sign up for. So we'll be sending out a schedule for that. You can sign up for a half-hour slot, come talk with some of our career advisors. Basically take about 15 minutes answering practice questions with them, and then they'll give you feedback from the career advisor point of view. So they're professionals. It's what they do all the time. So that should be very good. And then finally on the 24th, we have our career fair, which we currently have 11 companies signed up for, which is awesome. Several of which are new. So really looking forward to that. I believe that is everything I have. So I will turn it over to Neha. So Neha, welcome and thank you for doing this for us.
Thanks, Dr. Porter. Okay, so today we're going to be going over basically, let's say it's your first interview. Let's say you went to our last career fair and you're fortunate to get an interview. Congratulations. And this is basically going to be what you'll expect and how to prepare for the interview process. All right, so we're going to be starting out with what you'll expect to see in your interviews. You'll typically have interviews with these three groups of people or a combination of the three. It depends on the company. HR will usually ask behavioral questions, and these questions can be about the company, like how did you hear about us? What made you decide to come to our company, et cetera, et cetera. Or they can be like basic ideologies, like is the customer always right? And how well do you keep up with the news in science and technology? These questions are usually asked online in a questionnaire beforehand. But if not, then HR is usually the one to ask them. They're basically making sure if you're a good fit for the company first rather than the position, if that makes sense. Usually it'll be online as separately, not really an interview, quote unquote. It's kind of like an online quiz, but yeah. Next is your potential teammates and coworkers. Since these people are the ones you'll usually be working with the most, you'll want to leave a good impression, since they'll not only be looking for people to fit the job, but they'll also be looking for people that are fun to work with, right? They'll be asking you more technical questions rather than related to the position. Oh, I'm sorry. They'll be asking you technical questions related to the position and about experience and skills listed on your resume. Sometimes you'll be asked something that you 100% won't know. They'll do this because they want to see how you think through these questions and how effective of a communicator you are, because critical thinking and effective communication are crucial in these roles. So if you do get asked a question that you don't know, don't worry. That's pretty normal. Just go with the flow, answer how you normally would. Um, and finally, interviews with your manager, supervisor, or just an executive. This one is one that you want to be kind of formal with in how you carry yourself. Um, it's typically like at the end or close to the end of your interview process. And here you will learn more details of your position, like your pay and your schedule. And you can also ask questions about the position if you have any, like in the interview. Actually, in fact, I highly recommend you ask questions because that reflects well on you. And it conveys that you have like the willingness to learn and grow on the job. So if you ask questions, then that's just gonna look better on you. Yes, Dr. Porter.
Really quick comment just on the one with the possible teammates and the coworkers. Actually, it's just in general on if you don't know an answer to a question, it's okay not to know on some of those, especially those detailed questions like you were saying. But the thing that you do want to answer with is how you would find out or how you would go about solving that problem of not knowing. Definitely don't want to just say, I don't know. You can say, I don't know, but, and follow up. So sorry, I just wanted to throw that in there. Oh, okay, I'll be quiet now.
Oh, you're okay. That was a good point. Don't worry. Oh, yeah, that was a really good point. But yeah, usually it's the last stage. And I said formal earlier. By formal, I don't mean like um change your persona or anything like that. Just not the same as you would do like your teammates because they are an executive. So now we're going to the stages of the interview. Um, this is generally how the interview will go. Is it concrete? No, but it is the most common. So first you're gonna want to give like a really short introduction to who you are in the form of an elevator pitch. I won't touch on this right now since it'll be covered later by Arwa, but make sure your first impression is a good one since it'll set the tone for the rest of the interview. Don't be afraid of making small talk. You both know that you're there to talk business, and I get that interviews can be intimidating, but at the end you're both still people, right? It's I understand that there's kind of a power dynamic going on, but you're still people, and they also understand that you're nervous, so the small talk can also be a good way to calm your nerves. And it'll also be a good way to show that you're a sociable person and that your mind isn't just work, work, work. You can like chill out when you need to, you know? And it never hurts to get to know the other person a little bit and like connect with them. You'll be asked about your background and skills, so make sure you're able to explain not just the outcome of like an experience point, but also what you did specifically and what you took away from it. Because these points would be what you would draw from when you're asked questions like, I don't know, like, tell me about a time you overcame an obstacle, or how do you organize tasks in a team? Questions like that. These experiences are going to be what you're going to be using to answer these questions. And so if they have like a bit of background knowledge on your resume, they can understand your question or your answers a little bit better. Um, then the Q&A section, you could consider this section and the previous section to be like one big Q&A, but the Q&A section is basically more based on the position rather than based on your resume. Like here is where any technical or situational questions will be asked. These questions could be in the form of blank and blank happened. If blank happened, what would you do? And they would be where you would demonstrate your skills and show your value to the company, show that you have value that you can bring and something new to the table. You can also show your knowledge about the company here and demonstrate the fact that you took the time to like research the company and the position instead of like spam clicking submit on resumes. For example, like if you were to do, I don't know, for web, right? And then they ask you for, let's say, how would you just find out about if this biomaterial is compatible with the body? Then if you took biomaterial like we have at UTD, then you could use that here. And excuse me, but the throat is really dry. You can use that here and basically get your point across that, hey, I have some knowledge that can be valuable to you. And then when you arrive to your conclusion, as stated before, be sure to ask any questions that you need to. Ask for your interview's contact information, whether you'll be working with them or not. It doesn't hurt to network, right? And of course, thank the interview for their time. And be sure to send up a follow-up email as courtesy so the interview can remember you. That's really important, is sending up the follow-up. This is a really good infographic for the job interview. Like, for example, the introduction. I'm pleased to meet you. Here's where we do like a little elevator pitch. This would be like those questions, like the behavioral questions, situational ones. This one would be the ones that show that you actually research the company and that you bring something new to the table. And then, of course, the follow-up. The follow-up is very important. Not a lot of people actually follow up, so doing a follow-up really makes you stand out from a lot of candidates. All right, so now we'll go over the types of interviews you can possibly encounter. So the interviews we discussed before fall under these two categories. The screening interview covers the one typically been given by HR and help narrow down the candidate pool, so interviewers further down the line can focus on candidates' skills and technical knowledge with a few candidates. There's actually a list of possible questions that they'd ask in these screening interviews on like the UT website. I can, after the presentation, I can put that in the chat so that it can be accessible for everybody. The behavioral interview will typically be conducted by teammates. Oh, there you go. The behavioral interview will typically be conducted by teammates, coworkers to gauge the extensiveness of the candidate's soft skills. It consists of like situational questions in which like the candidate is presented like a scenario and they're expected to provide like the best course of action for the scenario. Like Dr. Porter was talking about earlier with the like a question that you won't know. Most of these questions you won't know also because they could be giving something that you'll be encountering in the position. And of course you haven't done the position yet, so you don't know most of the stuff that you're going to be encountering. So these will definitely be like questions that could be asked in the behavioral interview. And UTD also has some behavioral interview questions on that same page. This also can be put into the hiring decisions category, like from the previous slide. And it's basically a great indicator of how the candidate will perform in the workplace. So it's used a lot, it's really common. Okay, so can I have some examples of behavioral interview questions from everybody? If you don't want to say anything, you can put it in the chat, but I will not go to the next slide until I get 3 answers. Just like something that you could expect to be asked whenever, let's say a teammate is trying to ask you like a behavioral interview question. What kind of questions do you think you'd encounter? Come on, just three answers.
Would they ask about weaknesses and strengths?
Yeah, they can ask about, let's say you have a weakness in this field. How would you be able to counteract it, for example? Or like, how would you be able to make up for it? That's a good one. Can I have another one?
There's one in the chat.
Oh, gotcha. Yes, that's a good one. There's a lot where it's like, is the customer's always right? That's a really good one.
Can you read them out loud?
Oh, sorry. Give the question the question that they gave was, give an example of how you'd appease a customer who's disappointed with the service or product. So yeah, that's a really good one. How do you deal with conflicts or new challenges in the workplace? Yeah, that's a very appropriate for like corporate, because it's another one for, I guess, teammates, where they'd be like, hey, I'm trying to check out if I actually would be okay with working with you or not. Because there's definitely going to be new challenges in a new environment. So if there's not a good way to encounter that, then that's kind of a no-go for candidates. So here's some examples of interview prompt. Behavioral interview prompts they're very common. So same thing, like, how do you handle working under pressure? Tell me time you failed. Basically, if you a good way to get these interview questions like kind of fast, you could take your experiences and write a little bit of a detailed summary of about each of them, not in your resume, just for yourself, so that you don't have to think really hard about the certain experience, so that you have like a quick guide to look at, if that makes sense. All right. So we have come to probably the most intimidating type of interview, the technical interview. And although everyone dreads the technical interview, unfortunately, it is in fact very important for interviewers to test the skills you have on your resume, whether it be through coding or interpreting data. Don't worry though, because it's not common, and candidates are given advance notice and tips on how to prepare. They're difficult, but once again, they're meant to be difficult in order to test like critical thinking and communication skills, because you're going to encounter all this stuff in the workforce. So it's good for them to see if you work under pressure, because that's how it's going to happen sometimes. All right, so here we have some example prompts that can be used to test the candidate. The second prompt, in fact, is actually extremely important, because to us as biomedical engineers, you'll see this a lot in medical device companies like Abbott or Epimed, MedPace, etc. Because biomedical engineers are basically like the jack of all trades, if that makes sense. So we'll usually be working with mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, chemical engineers, etc. So it's kind of our job to effectively communicate to all of these different disciplines, in a way for it to make it easier to someone who has limited skills to understand, right? Because obviously someone that is in an electrical engineering background isn't going to be in the same skill level in SolidWorks as someone in a mechanical engineering background, right? But we have a little bit of both under our belt, so we can be like the bridge between the two. So the second question is really important for us as biomedical engineers. Okay, and last type of interview, but not least, is the abstract interview. And this is one's actually really fun. Basically, it's a technical interview, but super random. And it's basically used to see how good the interviewee's improv skills are, if that makes sense. It's also a good way to measure if a candidate would be enjoyable to work with, right? It uses to see like the candidate's personality more than just their skills, because these are random questions that will have nothing to do with the interview, just for fun. And because they're so random, they're coming out of nowhere. So you have basically no prep or anything. This is all you, you know? And it's very genuine, these questions. And
I
it's
had one
really
once
good.
that asked me what kind of animal would I be if I could be an animal.
Oh
It's one of those
gosh.
ones where there's no wrong answer, except for the way that you answer it.
It's a spirit animal.
Exactly. There we go.
There was one, so in a position I had, my boss was giving us the choice to have key lime pie, coconut, sorry, not coconut, carrot cake, or chocolate chip cookies at like a really nice restaurant. And I said key lime pie and made this entire argument about how it should be key lime pie. And she made that like a new interview question. Like if you were at a really nice restaurant and you had key lime pie, carrot cake, and cookies, what would you choose and why?
See, that's the one where you could be totally wrong though, because I mean, even though key lime pie is good, I mean, carrot cake. Come on. That's right.
But not cookies, right? Because you could go to
Well, I mean, at a
McDonald's.
restaurant. Yeah. Okay. Anyways,
But yeah, see, there's a really good way to actually see your critical thinking skills like at the moment, right? How fast can you think of can you think through all of these different questions? And honestly, if you're the kind of person that likes to argue food opinions like I am, you'd probably do great in these. Not all of them would be food opinions, but I think food opinion users would be very good at quick thinking. All right, so that is enough from me. I will pass it to Arwa now. Arwa, you can tell me when I need to click the slide.
All right, so I will be talking about interview prep first. So it's very important to go to an interview prepared. You can't just tell yourself the questions are going to be common sense and I'm just going to answer them. It's going to be fine. If you want to do good in an interview, you have to go in prepared. Next slide. So here are some general interview prep that you want to make sure that you have before going into an interview. The first one would be researching the company and their mission and the culture, and then you got to be familiar with their recent work that they have accomplished. And so this applies to medical device companies. You have to know what they're doing and then a little bit about their recent work. The second one would be fully understand and be able to explain the job description and the responsibilities. And so this applies to doing research on the job itself before going into the interview. And then you have to be prepared to summarize your experience in about 30 seconds and describe what you bring to the position. And so it's really important when you're asked, like, tell me a little about yourself or tell me a little bit about your educational background or any of your experiences. It's important to say if you have a lot of experiences or even if you have a few experiences, it's important to emphasize on the ones that apply to the position or talk about them in a way that does apply to the position. And so you also have to practice answers to common interview questions and then multiple times so that you're really confident in the responses. And so it's also advised to have kind of a general answers, like have it in a document, general answers to some of the very common behavioral questions. Some of these questions are repeated in most interviews, especially the behavioral questions. And so you also have to prepare a well thought out questions for the interviewer. So asking questions to the interviewer is also very important because it shows that you are interested and you want to learn more about the company or the role itself. And then you also have to know your resume. This one's also very important because the interviewer always comes back to your resume and your experiences, and they're gonna ask you questions from your resume. And so you have to know it and you have to show them that you did your research and you're well prepared before going into the interview. Next slide. So here are some common interview questions. The first one is tell me about yourself. Second one is why do you want to work here and why this company specifically? And so this goes back to without having your research done about the company and the role. And so this is where you would answer like your reasons that you want to be in this company, and then you can back it up with, for example, the company's mission. Say that it really applies to also your values and you really want to be a part of this company. Why are you a qualified candidate for this job? This is where you can discuss your experiences that applies to the job qualifications, for example. The fourth one is, what are your greatest strengths and weaknesses? This is a very common question. I get that question in most of the interviews that I've had done, and it's very important to have a general answer in your mind that you want to give to the interviewer, not just, I don't have any weaknesses, I'm good at so and so and so. It's important to give at least one thing that you consider as your weakness, and then explain how you've been working on it in the past, or how you are working on it to overcome it. The fifth one is, why did you choose your career path, your major? This is where you talk about your educational background, your interests, any classes that made you choose your major. And then the other one is, how would someone describe you? And where do you see yourself in 5 years? What are your career goals? What do you hope to gain from this experience? And then behavioral questions. So these are all very common questions that I advise you to have just a document, and then general answers for them that you can have prepared before any interview. Next slide. So the STAR method here is kind of a structured outline that helps you in answering behavioral questions. I'm going to talk about each step in details, but the first one is situation, and then the second one is task, the third one is action, and then the last one is result. Next slide. All right, so for when you're asked a behavioral question, you want to typically start with describing the situation. And so you have to describe the specific situation you are in and set a scene for the interviewer. And you want to give them enough detail so that they know what's going on and they can follow along in what you're trying to tell them. And this can be from any previous job or any relevant experience. It doesn't even have to be like specifically in a job. It can be in any setting, and you just have to apply it to the question that they're asking. And so the second one is the task. So what goal were you working toward, and what was your specific responsibility in that situation? Next slide. And so the third step in asking a behavioral question would be the action. You have to describe the action that you took to address the situation. It's very important to be specific when answering questions like those, and then describing what you did specifically to help out in the situation. You want to focus on saying, I took this action to do so and so. It's not really advised to say, we as a team did this and this and that. So you have to kind of apply it to yourself. Even if it was a team decision, you have to loop it back to yourself and how you helped in making that decision. And then the final step would be the result. You have to describe what the outcome was after the actions that you took, and then you have to take credit for how you addressed the situation or accomplished it. And then it should typically be a positive result, and you want to be sure to describe what you learned in that situation. Next slide. Next slide, Neha.
It's up.
Is it not loading?
Okay, it's up for me.
I don't think it's loading for me. Can you guys see the slides?
It is still showing action and results.
Okay, is it not STAR method example? Okay. How about now?
No.
Uh-oh, okay.
You want me to take
Yeah.
it? I can get it up on my computer.
Okay. Because I'm like at the end of the interview now. I mean, the end of the thing now.
Hang on.
Sorry about this.
You're good.
Oh, there it goes to the elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Um,
What? Okay.
if
How
you
about
go
this? Can you see it now?
back a few slides.
Star method example, right?
Yes.
There you go.
So I have here an example of answering a behavioral question using the STAR method. So the question is, tell me about a time when you achieved a goal that you initially thought was out of reach. And so here the person goes by answering the question with first addressing the situation. In my previous digital marketing role, my company made the decision to focus primarily on email marketing and was looking to increase their list of email subscribers pretty aggressively. And then the task, they go by and say, as the email marketing manager, my target was to increase the size of our email list by at least 50% in just 1 quarter. And so the action that they took, they say, I started by going back through our old blog post and adding in content and upgrades that incentivized the email subscriptions, which immediately gave our list a boost. And so they describe the result, and then they say, as a result of those additions to our email strategy, I was able to increase our subscriber list from 25,000 subscribers to 40,000 subscribers in 3 months, which exceeded our goal by 20%. And so it's I think it's really helpful to use the STAR method example when you're trying to answer behavioral questions. Even if you look up like common behavioral questions and you want to start out your little document and you want to put answers that apply to you to those behavioral questions, you can always think back to the STAR method, and it'll definitely help you outline these answers. Next slide.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So here are questions that you can ask the interviewer. So part of interview prep, after being prepared with yourself and your information and how to answer what questions, you also want to be prepared and have some questions that you want to ask the interviewer, because like we said, it's very important to show them that you're interested and you want to learn more about the role and more about the company itself. And so here are a few questions that you can ask them. What do you love most about the company and working there? What are you specifically looking for in candidates? Where do you see the company in 5 years? What does a day as the role look like? And then, can you explain how your role has changed and grown during your time as an employee? And then last one is, what is a typical challenge for a person coming into this position? And so these are all questions that look back to the company or the position itself, and it kind of shows that you really do have an interest in the company and you want to learn more about the role and how you as a candidate can improve yourself to be more fit for the position. Next slide. So on the day of the interview, if it's in person, bring multiple copies of your resume, and if it's virtual or over the phone, have a copy of your resume in front of you for reference. And so this goes back to showing that you actually know the information on your resume and then you came in the interview well prepared. You got to wear proper interview attire, such as business formal. Even if it's virtual, you're going to have your camera on, and then you need to show the interviewer that you're prepared and you're well dressed and presentable for the interview. And then you also have to be aware of the nonverbal communication, such as posture, eye contact, facial expressions, and body language. They're all very important. You have to maintain eye contact with the interviewer. I know sometimes it gets intimidating. Obviously, you don't have to like stare at them the whole time they're asking you questions. You can like make eye contact and then look away for a little bit. And then for some people, I know it gets like really intimidating to like look the person right in the eyes. So you can also always look like in the center of their forehead. If to them, it'll look like you're making eye contact. And then of course you have to be there on time. And for example, if your interview is at 10 a.m. in the morning, being there at 10 a.m. is not considered on time. You have to be there, I would say at least 15 to 10 minutes before the interview, because then it shows that you're prepared and you're ready for them whenever they call you in for the interview. And then you have to answer questions concisely and directly, and then focus on your relevant skills and experiences. Ask questions about the company and position, and then most importantly, you gotta be yourself because interviewers want to see your personality. Next slide.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
So even if you're in virtual, wear everything in the business formal attire. I had a interviewer ask to see if I was wearing shoes, and I wasn't wearing shoes because I am in my house. And yeah, so definitely like go all the way, even if you're at home. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so like Niho was saying, it's really advised to be fully dressed, even if your interview is online, because they could ask you, show me your outfit or show me your shoes. Who knows? Okay, so elevator pitch. Next slide. So it's really important to have an elevator speech prepared. So why was it called an elevator speech or an elevator pitch? So imagine yourself, you're in an elevator with a person that you really want to network with, or you really want to connect with because they're kind of somehow related to a company or a job that you are looking for. And so you're in that elevator with them, and so you want to be able to kind of introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about yourself and kind of describe what you want from them, and then also ask them a question or keep end it with a hook so that they want to hear more from you after you guys leave the elevator. And so it's really important to keep it short, between 30 to 60 seconds, and also keep it interesting for that person, so that they want to hear more about you even after you leave the elevator. Next slide. All right, so here are the 4 steps that you can use when preparing your elevator speech. I'm going to give more examples about each step in the next slide, but the first one would be to introduce yourself. And then the second one would be briefly explain your current experiences and what you do. And then the third one would be talk about your interests and what you want to do in your career. And then the last one would be to end it with a hook to keep the conversation going. And then what's really important, and that is that you want to ask yourself, what is my main goal in this interaction? And what do I want from networking with this person? What's my goal with me wanting to connect with them? Next slide. So here is an example of these 4 steps that I described earlier. So the first one would be to introduce yourself. Here, hi, my name is Sarah, and it's so nice to meet you today. And then the second one is to provide a summary of what you do. And so here it says, I'm the PR manager specializing in overseeing successful initiative launches from beginning to end. And so here she describes what she does in a small sentence. And the third one is explain what you want. So here she says, I find the work your PR team does to be innovating and refreshing. I'd love the opportunity to put my expertise to work for your company. And so here she explains what she wants from this person. And then the last one is finishing with a call to action. Would you mind if I set up a quick call next week for us to talk about any upcoming opportunities on your team? And so he or she ends it with a question. And so that kind of is a hook when you ask the person a question, and then they want to like answer you and give you answers to the question. Next slide. All right, so this is the end of our presentation. We're ready to take any questions that y'all have. Feel free to say them out loud or just putting them in the chat.
I will also put the link for all of the interview questions in the chat right now.
So I have one for you. When do you need to start treating the interview as an interview? Like, when does it actually start? Is it when you walk through the door? Or when you actually sit down and start talking to the person?
I'd say it's when you're getting ready, to be honest. Because, like, when you're getting ready, you're, like, hyping yourself up, you know? So, it's like, I feel like if you get yourself in the mode before you get there, then by the time you're, like, at, we'll say the venue, then you're pretty set and you're pretty comfortable with like being in the interview mindset. So I'd say if you start early, then it'd be a lot easier. So start when you're like getting ready because you're gonna be you're gonna be getting ready in business attire anyway, and that's gonna help a lot with your mentality with this interview. So
I might even push it back even further to the point where when you started talking to the people about setting it up, because they
that's a good
will
point, yeah.
they'll reflect upon your emails and everything like that, and how formal you're being, or how sloppy your emails are and whatnot, or who you're talking to. If you're talking to an administrative assistant, and if you're rude to them, you can kiss their job goodbye.
You don't burn bridges,
No.
right?
Yeah, because even if they're not interviewing you yet, they're also watching like your actions and how you communicate with them and how professional you are. So this all ties back to them deciding if they want to hire you or not.
So I got Tyler asking, what would be the best way to differentiate yourself from other competitors during an interview? Nice.
I'd say just make yourself more sociable. Like, so show that, like, yeah, of course you're going to be nervous. Of course you're going to be intimidated. But show, like, you understand that, okay, yeah, I'm here for work, but work isn't my entire life. And I can also get along with you guys as people, right? So, for example, like, if you were to make small talk, like, oh my gosh, it was so cold outside and I almost slipped. I hope I don't do that again. Or let's not talk about the weather. Um, like, oh, I made like a very bad pie. Something that's like a little bit about yourself to show that you're opening up and you're willing for like, if you're willing to open up to new people and I guess try new experiences because this is a giant new experience for you. So show that you're open to everything like that.
I think this one goes back to like how we said you got to be like yourself. Even if you're in an interview, you have to show a little bit of your personality so that they see like how different you are from other people.
I'll agree with both of you, but then I would also add what will definitely make you stand out and make them want to hire you is if you've done all your homework and you know what answers they're looking for. So on the behavioral questions, when they're asking you, tell me about a time when you've had a problem with a conflict with a coworker and how you've dealt with it. If you can get to the root of what they're looking for with that, realizing they're not really looking for my specific time that I had a problem, but rather how am I going to deal with conflict? How do I seek resolution? That sort of thing. And how does that fit within their culture? That will definitely make you stand out. So if you do your homework on the company, basically answer in a way that you are their ideal candidate, right? So you have to get into their psychology a little bit, which can be tricky. That helps for sure.
Definitely.
All right, looks like we have a couple more. How many resumes should you bring to the interview?
By resumes, do we mean like copies of the resume or?
I think he does, yeah. Hard copies.
Okay. So usually nowadays, most interviews are gonna be online. So usually like whenever you'd submit your resume into a job posting, everyone has that file open. If you were to bring, like if there was an in-person resume, let's say if it was a panel, right? I'd say like 5 to 8, I think would be a good safe estimate because I don't think they're gonna put 8 people, but like you have a couple copies just in case, right?
So on this one, I would also say it depends on the interview itself. So usually when they're setting up the interview, you can ask, what's it going to be like? Do you know how many people I'm going to be talking with? That sort of thing. Like, what's the structure? Is it going to be a panel? Am I going to be talking to people individually? And you can get an idea of the schedule that they have in mind for you. And then you can base the number of resumes you need to bring on that, and always bring a couple extra for sure. And you want to make sure that you're using the nice, the resume paper, the stiff stuff that, feels nice and looks nice. But I mean, Neon's definitely right. They should have their own electronic copy. And some people won't want a physical copy, but you'd much rather have them than not have them. I would agree with that. What's your opinion on making jokes in the interview as far as breaking the ice? Ooh.
Don't go too far. I went too far. It was really dumb.
With that one, I feel like you should match the energy of your interviewer. If they're like very serious and they seem like they want to get the interview done and get like straight with it, then I personally wouldn't crack a joke. But if they seem like they're willing to make conversations and maybe they say something funny first and then you can maybe make a joke, but also like don't go too far with it because at the end of the day, it is an interview and you want to stay professional.
Professional, definitely. I also would avoid making jokes with your manager, right? Or like if you were to have an interview with your executive, then I would avoid making jokes, period, until you meet them in person. With your teammates, I'd say it would be okay to like make a joke in the teammate interview because they're going to be working with you side by side and they want, of course, again, match the energy. But if it were an executive, I'd say better be safe than sorry, right?
I would disagree slightly, I think. Read the room. It's a tough one to do, and I think that's what you mean by, not to put words in your mouth, but I think that's what you're meaning by when you say match the energy. It's if they're acting very social and the kind of person who seems like they would like to joke around some, then you're totally fine. But like they say, if the person's very serious, then I would probably avoid joking, and definitely be careful of the topics that you pick. Do not pick anything that could be offensive at all. Just keep it general, keep it light, and be sure that you actually get serious, because if you just joke, for example, tell me about one of your flaws. You say, "Oh, I don't have any. Next, I'm naturally perfect," and you kind of laugh it off. You didn't answer their question. You made a joke, and that's bad, right? So make sure you're actually answering their questions and getting to it. So you can use humor a little bit, but definitely read the room. Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Neha.
Oh, I was gonna read the next question.
Go for it.
The next question was, what would you do if in the middle of the interview you get the impression that you're not doing well and start getting nervous? So at that point, if you think you're not doing well, I still say like just go for it. Like again, it's the whole don't build bridges thing, don't burn any bridges thing, but also you never know. right? You never know if, because they know that you're nervous, right? And they know that, like, okay, this person's probably gonna flub up at some point, but that's not gonna be who they are 100% in the job. They're nervous. They're in a very heightened state of mind, and it's okay if they make mistakes, right? And so, for example, I did an interview and I said in the interview, and it was like a pre-recorded interview, and I got that job, surprisingly. I didn't know I was gonna get that job, but I still went on with the interview because, and again, these are pre-recorded questions, so they recorded that and they have that saved in a database. So I didn't know I was gonna like keep going, but I try to like keep my energy strong, right? And I tried to basically pretend like it didn't happen and just continue with the other interview questions as if it didn't happen. And that's kind of a, I don't know if that's like dismissing it. I really don't want to dismiss like the fact that you are nervous, but I can think it's more of the thing like it's okay. They know that I'm nervous. If I make a mistake, it's okay, right?
Yeah, and you definitely don't want to just give up for sure. Yeah, just keep going because you never know. You may be thinking it's going terrible, and most of the time people do think that they've done absolutely terrible, and you may have done perfectly well. So if you think it's really not going well, just keep going with it. And I wouldn't say you have nothing to lose because at some point you can build a bad reputation for yourself. So don't just totally like blow it off and everything, but embrace it and just keep going.
I feel like in a situation like this, it'd be helpful to not to get in your head about how nervous you're getting and rather use your focus on the interview itself and the questions. I know it's easier said than done, but try to focus less on how nervous you're getting and then focus on the questions and what you can do to make it better moving forward.
That's great. That's good advice.
Yay.
Okay, so Tyler asked, what sort of demeanor body language carries over best in a professional interview? Is it okay to be too confident? What do y'all think?
Body language, like what sort of demeanor okay, too confident. I wouldn't say, I'm trying to imagine what too confident is. Is it like Elon Musk?
I think that would be like walking into the room and kind of like sprawling over the place like you own it or anything like that.
Because that's definitely a no. But I'm trying to think of like the body language would be like slouching, right? Too confident. So I would
I
say
tend to
just
think of
like,
like man spread when I think of too confident, you know, when you're taking up two
oh,
seats when you only need to take up one seat and all that. I could be, is that what you mean, Tyler? Something along those lines, or what do you mean by too confident?
I'm meaning along the lines of like where you just have utmost faith in yourself and you just carry yourself in a way where, like you just hold yourself with you know, you hold your head up high, you have good confidence, you answer all the questions with like boldly, and with clear language. Like I'm sure that can never hurt anybody, right?
No, I
yeah,
think that's what you're
definitely.
striving for.
Right. But when
Yeah.
when do you cross the line? Like when is too much?
When you start like when it starts coming off as superiority, I guess.
As long as you don't come off as being cocky, like then that's a problem.
Like, oh, I'm better than the other candidates is not what you want to go for. It's more like, I guess it's more mindset. Like, instead of thinking like I'm better, you could think like I have something different to bring to the table, right? Because like I feel like I'm better. I guess that's what confident it like instead of being confident in like I'm better, you can be like confident in what you have, like new, like different than what the other candidates have, right?
Yeah,
I guess
exactly.
that would be a good confident.
I think a
But
lot of
like,
confidence comes through with how comfortable you are, how comfortable you seem. So if you seem comfortable, that's great, right? Definitely you want to have the good posture, sitting up straight and everything like that. But it's also comfortable, not so comfortable that, you know, you're kicking off your shoes and making yourself at home on the couch, but comfortable as in you can see yourself there.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, also talking with hands. That's a good one.
All right. Oh, there we go. What is your opinion about wearing perfume in person during interviews?
Not too
Nice.
much.
Yeah, definitely avoid too much.
Some people are allergic.
Yes, I think actually last fall we had one of our recruiters advise against wearing perfume. I think a light dusting is okay, but it's more proper hygiene is definitely something you want to strive for. Deodorant, all that jazz, but you do not want it to be overwhelming with a perfume. There shouldn't be like a cloud that's following you into the room.
Okay.
All right. I think if we have time for probably one more question, but if I don't see one pop up, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Do we have any other questions? All
Yeah,
right.
do you have any other workshops that are similar to this coming up in the future, in the near future? I know there's a ECS job fair that's on February 20, but is there anything else along like
Yeah.
these lines?
So on next Friday, we'll actually have another one that's going to be more of a workshop. So we'll actually practice answering some behavioral questions. We'll talk a little bit more about strategy and a few other things with that. That'll be in person in SLC. And then the week after that, we'll be having signups for mock interviews with some people from the Career Center, both the UTD Career Center and the ECS Career Center. And then the week following that, which I believe is the 24th, is the Bioengineering Career Fair. So we'll have
Yes,
11
24th.
companies. We have 11 companies so far signed up that are focused on hiring bioengineers. So we know for sure that there are companies for bioengineers there, as opposed to ECS, where they're looking for everybody. Not that the ECS one is bad, but those are our immediate ones coming up there.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, and that's a great question to end on. So thank you all for joining us. Hope everybody's still staying safe and staying warm. And I look forward to seeing you all in person next week. Thank you to Neha and Arwa for presenting.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
I'm gonna stop sharing.
I will stop recording.